This guy's a pathological liar.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is...
That's almost a clinical...
well, it is.
Yeah.
Donald Trump knows that the faster he talks, the more lies he can tell, and the faster he talks, the harder it is for any interviewer to keep up with his lies. How many lies does Donald Trump tell? Politico has actually tried to count them. Politico studied 4.6 hours of Trump talk last week, and they found one misstatement every 5 minutes on average. Essentially, they found that Donald Trump lies about everything he talks about, from our trade deficit with China to our trade deficit with Japan, to manufacturing jobs, healthcare, Christianity, how he is self-funding his campaign, and everything else you have ever heard him talk about.
Movement going on, folks. This is a movement. This is a movement. I'm going to Mississippi in a little while. We have tens of thousands of people. We're only confined by the size. Look at this, back to the corners. We're only confined. We set a record here today. We always set records. Movement going on, folks. This is a movement. This is a movement. I'm going to Mississippi in a little while. We have tens of thousands of people. We're only confined by the size. Look at this, back to the corners. We're only confined. We set a record here today. We always set records.
I know police in Chicago. But when I was in Chicago, I got to meet a couple of very top police. All I know is this. I went to a top police officer in Chicago who is not the police chief, and I could see by the way he was dealing with his people, he was a rough, tough guy. They respected him greatly. I said, how do you think you do it? He said, Mr. Trump, within 1 week, we could stop much of this.
But he didn't tell you exactly precisely how.
But the question remains, who was this top cop that Trump met with? Because the Chicago Police Department says no one in the senior command has ever met with Donald Trump or a member of his campaign. But we here at The Late Show, we've done a little digging, and I'm happy to say we have that cop that Trump spoke to here tonight. Please welcome, live from Chicago via satellite, Officer Rod Johnson. How are you going to face down criminals if you're not even carrying a gun?
Oh, I got guns.
Oh, my God.
Now, Trump is saying he watched from his Manhattan apartment as people jumped from the Twin Towers on 9/11.
I have a window in my apartment that specifically was aimed at the World Trade Center because of the beauty of the whole downtown Manhattan. And I watched as people jumped, and I watched the second plane come in.
While people were seen jumping from the towers that day, Trump's apartment in Midtown is roughly 4 miles from where the World Trade Center's towers stood.
Many people jumped, and I witnessed it. I watched them. I have a window in my apartment that specifically was aimed at the World Trade Center because of the beauty of the whole downtown Manhattan. And I watched as people jumped. I mean, my whole life really has been a no, and I fought through it. I have been, and you know, I talk about it. It's not been easy for me. It has not been easy for me. And, you know, I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. I came into Manhattan, and I had to pay him back, and I had to pay him back with interest. But I came into Manhattan, I started buying up properties. I wish. I got a very, very small loan from my father many years ago. I got a small loan, started a business, and it's now worth billions and billions and billions of dollars.
By the way, let's just put this in perspective. You said it hasn't been easy for you, but my dad gave me $1 million loan. That probably is going to seem pretty easy to a lot of people.
But $1 million isn't very much compared to what I built.
All right, I gotta talk for some of these just to explain the full story. So, not a lot of people know this. However, it has been reported that in 1978, in his first big project after running his dad's company for a while, a few years out of college, and his first big project was the construction of the Grand Hyatt Hotel in Manhattan, Trump actually did get a small loan of $1 million. For a source, I'm simply going to cite Wikipedia, although this has been reported in several places. However, even in the 70s, it took more than $1 million to build this, and this ought to be pretty obvious. In fact, it took over $70 million. Trump Sr. got his business partner to give a $70 million loan to Trump, and his dad personally put up his own fortune and guaranteed $35 million of it himself, which is a bit more than a small loan of $1 million. For perspective, $70 million in 1978 dollars is the equivalent of $250 million today. Trump would then go on to get many other loans from people, as well as many other loans from his family, and all of them were much bigger than $1 million. It's not bad for your very first loan. That's reasonably called starting out on top, as a matter of fact. And as you can see from this graph of what real estate prices in New York have done since the 70s, boy oh boy did he ever start at the right place and time. Graphs that do this are pretty much any speculator's wet dream, and there's no way anyone could have predicted it would have gone up so much. In fact, Trump himself started a mortgage company in 2006, which was 2 years before the mortgage crash. So, he definitely does not have a crystal ball. So, the small loan of $1 million is part of Trump's attempt to fabricate his actual record. With Trump, just about everything is fabricated, down to his hair and fake tan. Oh, and one more thing from the same clip.
I was always told that that would never work. Even my father, he said, you don't want to go to Manhattan. That's not our territory, because he was from Brooklyn and Queens, where we did, smaller things.
So Trump would have you think that his old man actually opposed his move to Manhattan, and it was his genius that allowed him to move there. However, as you can read yourself from a variety of sources, his dad is actually is the one that got him the $70 million loan from his business partner in the first place and put up $35 million of his own money to back it, which is a pretty funny way of opposing something.
Saying that I was in favor of Syria, he said I was in favor of Libya. I never discussed that subject. I was in favor of Libya. We would be so much better off if Gaddafi were in charge right now. I can't believe what our country is doing. Gaddafi in Libya is killing thousands of people. Nobody knows how bad it is. And we're sitting around, we have soldiers all over the Middle East, and we're not bringing them in to stop this horrible carnage. And that's what it is. It's a carnage. You talk about all of the things that have happened in history. This could be one of the worst. Now, we should go in, we should stop this guy, which would be very easy and very quick. We could do it surgically, stop him from doing it, and save these lives.
Let me ask you about Libya. You've been highly critical of Libya and Hillary Clinton. You were also for military action to oust Gaddafi and military action to take care of the humanitarian situation in Libya. You supported that.
When you say I supported it, I supported Libya?
Yeah, you supported intervention in Libya.
I did? Where do you see that? Now, we should go in, we should stop this guy, which would be very easy and very quick. We could do it surgically, stop him from doing it, and save these lives. Big difference from what we're talking about. I mean,
but you were for intervention.
Don't forget, I'm the only one. I made a lot of money with Gaddafi, if you remember. He came to the country, and he had to make a deal with me because he needed a place to stay, and he paid me a fortune, never got to stay there, and it became sort of a big joke. But the fact is that Libya was a disaster from the standpoint of the way it was handled. I mean,
but you were for intervention. Just to clear that up,
I was for doing something, but I wasn't for what you have right now. And right now, ISIS has their oil, John. ISIS is selling, and that's among the finest oil in the world. ISIS has taken over the Libyan oil. And we don't do blockades. We don't do anything. They're selling it. They're making a fortune with it. I am the only person on this dais, the only person that fought very, very hard against us, and I wasn't a sitting politician, going into Iraq. Because I said going into Iraq, that was in 2003, you can check it out, I'll give you 25 different stories. In fact, a delegation was sent to my office to see me because I was so vocal about it. I'm a very militaristic person, but you have to know when to use the military. I'm the only person up here that fought against going into Iraq.
So I think I might have to talk for this one too. So notice how Trump just said he fought very, very hard against Iraq and could produce 25 different stories about how opposed he was, but he's never really produced that. So first of all, we should listen to the quickly becoming infamous Howard Stern interview in 2002, and I think it was about 6 months before the war started. Let's have a listen.
Probably the most important question I can ask you on a day like today is, where is Melania and is she naked?
Well, Melania is now in bed. Yes. I'm in my office.
Right.
And as to whether or not she's naked, I'm not 100% sure. Really don't know the enemy.
I know, they're skulking around somewhere and you just feel like you're sitting duck.
But we have an idea who the enemy is, and a lot of times the politicians don't want to tell you that.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
Right. Are you?
Because it was such an obvious fabrication, he would later kind of soften his stance, but he would still hold to it. This is from a Matt Lauer town hall he gave a lot later.
I happened to hear Hillary Clinton say that I was not against the war in Iraq. I was totally against the war in Iraq. You can look at Esquire magazine from 2004. You can look at before that.
So Trump suggests we have a look. So, okay, let's have a look. First of all, the interview he talks about was in 2004, and that was after the war had started. In fact, by that time, Saddam had already been overthrown, no weapons of mass destruction had been found, and it was looking like we were stuck there. Public opinion in general had turned hard against the war. Once again, no strong evidence of being against it before the war was started, as if he made that call. All right, let's look at another clip. This time he's realizing he has to pretty much acknowledge the Howard Stern interview in this one.
Iraq is one of the biggest differences in this race. I opposed going in, and I did oppose it, despite the media saying no, yes, no. I opposed going in, and I opposed the reckless way Hillary Clinton took us out.
Okay, so first of all, that's another lie, because he actually wasn't opposed to getting out. I mean, it should actually count for two lies, because the troop withdrawal he was talking about began in 2007 after the surge, and Clinton wasn't Secretary of State until 2009. I mean, it lasted a long time and overlapped with her tenure, but it's silly to blame someone for something that started before they were actually in charge. But yeah, he actually was for troop withdrawal, so I'll come back to that one later. Well, let's continue with this clip for a little bit.
But I was opposed to the war from the beginning, long after my interview with Howard Stern. But 3 months before the Iraq war started, I said in an interview with Neil Cavuto that perhaps we shouldn't be doing it yet, and that the economy, these are quotes, that the economy, this was on live television, the economy is a much bigger problem as far as the president is concerned. This was before the war started by a very short distance.
So let's address this. In January 2003, roughly a couple months before the war, he did do an interview with Cavuto, but he didn't say he was against it. He did say perhaps we should wait for the United Nations, but he also says almost in the same breath, do it or don't, and that is not the same as being strongly against it. He does say he thinks the economy is a bigger problem than Iraq, but he also thinks that Iraq is still a problem, which is clearly not meaning what he's trying to make it seem. And even though he tries his hardest to twist, his official position in this interview was clearly do it or don't. And there is no universe where do it or don't is the same as strong opposition. In fact, once again, Trump's positions are kind of in line with the positions of a lot of people, because if you remember, around this time, right before the war started, there was a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not it would actually happen or not. So then hopefully this quote drives that home. I couldn't find any footage of people giving interviews, but around this time there was a whole lot of uncertainty. And his position of either do it or don't was, at the time, exactly what a lot of people were thinking. And it's not the same as strong opposition. In fact, he did a second interview with Cavuto over the phone in the first days of the war, where he called it a, quote, huge success.
Donald, can you hear me?
I can, Neil. How are you?
Good to have you back with us. What do you make of just how Wall Street's been reacting to what our military guys have been doing?
Well, I think Wall Street's waiting to see what happens, but even before the fact, they're obviously taking it a little bit for granted. It looks like a tremendous success from a military standpoint.
These are not the words of someone that was strongly against it. Trump was giving opinionated interviews all over the place, and if he was as strong against it as he claimed, we would know. But he wasn't. He wants to use the war as an example of his judgment, but in fact the only judgment he is showing is that he thinks it's alright to blatantly publicly lie in the age of recordable media.
Then in August of 2004, very early in the conflict, extremely early in the conflict, right at the beginning, I made a detailed statement in an interview to Esquire magazine. So right at the beginning.
And again, he goes back to the Esquire interview for evidence. However, this was not, quote, shortly after the war started, unquote. In fact, it was more than a year after Bush had already declared victory on the war. Remember this picture? In May 2003, this was supposed to be victory. And Trump did the Esquire interview 15 months later than this date. Or as he called it, quote, right after the war started. Okay, so we have A, his claimed heavy opposition to the war, which turned out not to be true. B, you have him claiming his interviews showing that he opposed the war, which turned out to be fabricated. Now let's see C, the final lie, how he claims he was against the drawdown.
And by the way, perhaps almost as bad was the way Barack Obama got out. That was a disaster. And I opposed the reckless way Hillary Clinton took us out.
All right, so let's go back to 2007 where he makes statements directly contradicting this.
How does the United States get out of this situation? Is there a way out of it? You know how they get out? They get out. That's how they get out. Declare victory and leave. Because I'll tell you, this country is just going to get further bogged down. They're in a civil war over there, Wolf. There's nothing that we're going to be able to do with a civil war. They are in a major civil war.
I would like to see President Bush get us out of Iraq, which is a total mess, a total catastrophe, and it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. It's a mess.
Look, so I'm going to ask you, businessman right now, because everybody, even the Democrats are saying it's a mess, it's a mess. Nobody has a plan. You are Mr. Ambassador, fix Iraq right now. Give me the 18-month plan.
Well, what you have to do is get out of Iraq. You can do it nicely. You can do it slowly.
No, that's
you can
vague.
do it rapidly.
What do we do? I'm putting you in charge. Is it 90 days? Is it troops out tomorrow? Is it a year? Do we set up a different kind of... What happens? You're in charge.
I would announce that we have been victorious in Iraq and all the troops are coming home. And let those people have their civil war.
For many years, Trump has been a guy who will make absolutely anything up, and he hasn't changed. Again and again, Trump's position on just about anything proves again and again to be nothing more than a basket of lies.
I am the only person on this dais, the only person that fought very, very hard against us, and I wasn't a sitting politician, going into Iraq. Because I said going into Iraq, that was in 2003, you can check it out, I'll give you 25 different stories. In fact, a delegation was sent to my office to see me because I was so vocal about it. I'm a very militaristic person, but you have to know when to use the military. I'm the only person up here that fought against going into Iraq.
He's already looking ahead to the debates for the general election, accusing Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party of rigging the debate schedule. Now, that's despite the schedule being set last September by a nonpartisan panel.
And Trump, well, this morning tweeting that he believes that the Democratic Party has already rigged those debates. The problem, though, with what he tweeted is that these debates are not set up by the Democratic Party. They are indeed set up by what's called a nonpartisan commission on presidential debates, which has set debates since 1988 to make sure that, one, debates are done, and two, that they're done fairly. And on Saturday, today, the commission reportedly responded saying they did not consult with any political parties or campaigns, and that the debates were scheduled about a year ago in September of 2015.
I got a letter from the NFL saying, this is ridiculous. Why are the debates against? Because the NFL doesn't want to go against the debates because the debates are going to be pretty massive from what I understand.
Now, this isn't a big surprise since 2 NFL games also aired on the same nights as debates back in 2012. But here's what your boss said this morning on ABC's This Week.
Well, I'll tell you what I don't like. It's against 2 NFL games. I got a letter from the NFL saying, this is ridiculous. Why are the debates against? Because the NFL doesn't want to go against the debates.
What's confusing about that statement, Jason, is that the NFL refuted it, saying, quote, while we'd obviously wish the debate commission could find another night, we did not send a letter to Trump. Did Donald Trump lie when he said he received a letter from the NFL?
He was notified by a source close to the league. And again, the issue here is we want people involved.
Why did he say he received a letter from the NFL?
He was notified by a source close to the NFL.
I don't understand why he told George Stephanopoulos he received a letter then.
I think that, getting into semantics a little bit here, Brian, but the point is that he was notified.
It's not semantics if you send me a letter versus make a phone call.
Brian, he was notified by a source close to the NFL, and this is something the Clinton campaign was notified as well.
Right. Well, the Clinton campaign, I think, probably knew when the debates were scheduled and knew when the football games were scheduled because the calendar for the debates came out in September of last year. The football calendar obviously was set later, but we all know games are on Sundays and Mondays. The commission has told me they have to spread these dates out. They have to do different days of the week. They have to avoid religious holidays. It's a lot of complicated reasons. Because on Friday night, Mr. Trump tweeted the following. He said that Clinton and the Dems are trying to rig the debates. But we know that's not true, Jason. We know the Commission on Presidential Debates chose these dates, and they did not consult with the campaign.
She starts off, the CNN reporter, absolutely horrible reporter. She starts off saying, oh, look, the room is half empty. The room wasn't half empty. Everybody was standing right next to me in the front of the room.
Listen to him on CNN's New Day.
Your reporter in South Carolina, who was absolutely terrible, she covered my speech. I made a speech to the African American Chamber of Commerce in South Carolina. Wonderful people. And the room was full. Every seat was full.
Every seat full? Not so much. This picture was taken while Mr. Trump was speaking. Here's some video around the same time. Notice he's on stage. And notice the many empty seats in the back of the room. Again, Mr. Trump.
When I went to the stage, everybody rushed forward. They all rushed to the front of the room. It was a ballroom. They all rushed to the front of the room. And when they did that, you had half of the seats in the back were empty because everybody was standing in the front.
For the record, not everyone was standing, and the empty seats were empty because they were never occupied. We weren't the only ones who noticed.
I never met Putin. I don't know who Putin is. He said one nice thing about me. He said I'm a genius.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he never called Donald Trump brilliant or talented.
Why do you always change the meaning of what I said? I only said that he was a bright person. Isn't he bright?
As an example, I own the Miss Universe. I was in Russia. I was in Moscow recently. And I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. I was in Moscow a couple of months ago. I owned the Miss Universe pageant. And they treated me so great. Putin even sent me a present, beautiful present with a beautiful note. I spoke to all of his people. If Putin wants to go in, and I got to know him very well because we were both on 60 Minutes. We were stablemates, and we did very well that night.
Do you have a relationship with Vladimir Putin, a conversational relationship, or anything that you feel you have sway or influence over his government?
I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today. He's probably very interested in what you and I are saying today, and I'm sure he's going to be seeing it in some form. I said thank you very much to the newspaper, and that was the end of it. I never met Putin.
What exactly is your relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I have no relationship with Putin. I have no relationship with Putin.
But I just want to clear this up because you did say on 3 different occasions you had a relationship with him. Now you say there is none.
Well, I don't know what it means by having a relationship. I mean, he was saying very good things about me, but I don't have a relationship with him. I didn't meet him. I haven't spent time with him.
Yeah, you said for 3 years, 13, 14, and 15, that you did have a relationship with him.
No, look, what do you call a relationship? I mean, he treats me with great respect. I have no relationship with Putin.
I don't think I've ever met him. I never met him. I don't think I've ever met him. You would know it if you did, wouldn't you? I think so, yeah, I think so. So I don't think I've ever met him. I mean, if he's in the same room or something, but I don't think so. Never spoken to him on the phone? I've been in Moscow. I didn't meet him in Moscow. Where?
And I got to know him very well.
I have nothing to do with Russia. Nothing to do. I never met Putin. Nothing to do with Russia whatsoever.
So you have no loans that from Russian banks or investors?
Absolutely not.
Okay, wait. Hold on. This one I wasn't going to comment on because I don't know too much about it, but I got to comment on it. And Trump definitely does have interests tied in Russia. See, a lot of domestic banks won't give him loans. His credit, unbelievably, is that bad. I mean, how does a billionaire ruin his credit? And that's actually its own story on its own. But for those of you that don't know, Trump has had a reputation for decades. I mean, they were even basing movie villains off of him in the 80s.
It's a little matter we need to talk about.
You heard him, girls. Party's over. Start talking, kid. What else you know about?
Okay, here's what I know. A lot of domestic banks won't give him loans. Unbelievably, my first exposure to this was an article in the Wall Street Journal, which is supposed to be right-wing. I mean, Rupert Murdoch owns it, but I guess they don't have a guy like Roger Ailes running it, so sometimes actual news might get in. Roger Ailes, by the way, if you don't know, is a Nixon-era propagandist who went on to be founder and CEO of Fox Cable News until very recently, and now he works directly for Trump's campaign. He's also an incredibly sleazy and creepy guy. Anyway, according to the Wall Street Journal, and it turns out a lot of other sources too, a lot of banks won't give Trump loans. He has ruined his credit, unbelievably. Deutsche Bank was one of the last major banks to do business with Trump stateside. Okay, Deutsche Bank is obviously German, but I guess they're in New York too or something. Interestingly enough, in 2005, this particular bank, Deutsche Bank, estimated Trump's actual wealth, his actual net worth, to be under $1 billion. And about that too, I have earlier pointed out Trump's near unlimited finance since the beginning and what real estate prices have done in New York. I mean, in Manhattan, a single average apartment now is almost $2 million. So Trump has at least got to be a billionaire. Even though most of the buildings with Trump's name on them actually aren't owned by him, he does have at least a few buildings in New York, so he's pretty much got to be worth $1 billion. However, this bank said in recently as 2005 that he wasn't a billionaire, and at the same time, Trump was claiming his own wealth to be over $4 billion. So that is interesting enough for me to want to point it out. So, after a while, even Deutsche Bank wouldn't do business with him, just like apparently every other major bank. At least its investment banking part, looks like its personal banking part still has a relationship, although it's questionable. Decision, if you read about their history especially, decisions like this could be why the bank is not doing that well today, as a matter of fact. So Trump had to go more overseas. Now, Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, was busted and had to resign because he took over $10 million in secret payments from pro-Russian political groups, which was exposed by several major outlets, which is interesting. Repeated hacks on the DNC and others have been traced back to Russia by actual law enforcement groups, which is also interesting. Trump denies having ties to Russia, even though he does, which is also interesting. But what is most interesting is Trump's unbelievable conflicts of interest. Trump is a guy, I mean, these aren't conspiracy theories. These have proof. He's a guy that uses his own charity that he definitely does not donate to buy multiple paintings of himself, re-gift money, pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and settlements. I mean, this is supposed to be charity money. And he gave at least one illegal political donation to a random prosecutor who dropped a fraud case against him after she got it. This is a guy who has diverted over $8 million and donated campaign donations to his own businesses. He's shady as hell. And if you don't think this overseas money, this massive amount of money he owes overseas, isn't a huge conflict of interest for him, well, then if you don't think that, I got a membership to Trump University I'd like to sell you. I mean, I'm planning to do more on Trump University and charity and stuff later, but for now, just realize that Trump definitely does have ties to Russia. So here we have two lies, one about either knowing or not knowing Putin. One of them has got to be false. The other is him saying that he has no ties to Russia, which also is false. So I realize this one is getting long, and no one knows completely the full story, but just to recap once more. Here you have it from Trump Jr.'s own mouth. Quote, "We've got a lot coming in from Russia," unquote. And here's the article. I've linked to a bunch of the articles in the description that I've shown. And again, from first and second hand accounts, He's ruined his credit here and has been getting investments heavily overseas, although it's very murky and no one seems to know how much. The conflicts of interest, however, are known to be big enough to be significant to him, and Trump is making it seem like he doesn't even have them, even though by a lot of actual non-political accounts he actually does. Also, if you look at Trump's history, any conflicts of interest are enough to be concerned about. And although no one knows the full extent, I mean, he really ought to release his taxes. His conflicts of interest are large, and not just in Russia, but in a lot of other places, China included as well. And also, Russia, famously corrupt. Once again, if you don't believe me, Trump's own kid has talked about this. And Russia has done things that are clearly designed to help Trump, and pro-Putin organizations have made illegal secret payments to his former campaign manager. It's incredible. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it isn't.
They have farms up here, and they don't get water. I said, oh, that's too bad. Is it a drought? No, we have plenty of water. I said, what's wrong? Well, we shove it out to sea. And I said, why? And nobody even knows why. And the environmentalists don't know why. Now, they're trying to protect a certain kind of 3-inch fish.
U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump insisted on Sunday in a phone interview with NBC's Meet the Press he was 100% right when he said he saw thousands of Muslims in Jersey City, New Jersey, cheering the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, even though fact checkers have deemed his statements false.
Saw it at the time. I stick by it.
I want surveillance. And you know what? We've had it before and we'll have it again. Hey, I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering as that building was coming down.
Holding tailgate style. Tailgate, you know what that means? Tailgate. That means football games, Ohio State, thousands of people in parking lots, on roofs, tailgate.
You know, the police say that didn't happen, and all those rumors have been on the internet for some time. So did you misspeak
It did
yesterday?
happen. I saw it. It was on television.
You saw that with your own eyes?
George, it
Police
did
say it
happen.
didn't
There were
happen.
people that were cheering in the other side of New Jersey where you have large Arab populations.
Donald, you have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or did you know what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest.
Why wouldn't it have taken place?
I think what I want to do is I want to talk just for a second. I wrote this out, and it's very close to my heart because I was down there. And I watch our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center, right after it came down.
After months of toying with the idea of running for president on the Reform Party ticket, the billionaire real estate developer has finally made a decision. When you say the party is self-destructing, what do you see as the biggest problem with the Reform Party right now?
Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem. Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem.
And talks about the extent of their support for you among people who are members of white supremacist groups. At the same time, we've heard this week that David Duke has come out, former leader of the Grand Dragon Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, come out and said he's supportive of your candidacy. So my first question is, why do people like that, like Donald Trump? And second, how do you feel about the David Duke quasi-endorsement?
I don't know the answer to the first. Who knows why? But I don't need his endorsement. I certainly wouldn't want his endorsement. I don't need anybody's endorsement.
Would you repudiate David Duke?
Sure, I would do that. If it made you feel better, I would certainly repudiate. I don't know anything about him.
Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem.
I don't know anything about him.
Yes, Mr. Trump, how do you feel about the recent endorsement from David Duke?
I didn't even know he endorsed me. David Duke endorsed me? Okay. All right. I disavow. Okay?
KKK Grand Wizard David Duke, who recently said that voting against you at this point would be treason to your heritage. Will you unequivocally condemn David Duke and say that you don't want his vote or that of other white supremacists in this election?
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, you know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group. I mean, I don't know what group you're talking about. You wouldn't want me to condemn a group that I know nothing about. I have to look. If you would send me a list of the groups, I will do research on them, and certainly I would disavow if I thought there was something wrong. But you may have groups in there that are totally fine, and it would be very unfair. So give me a list of the groups, and I'll let you know.
Okay. I mean, I'm just talking about David Duke and the Ku Klux Klan here, but...
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know David Duke. I don't believe I've ever met him. I'm pretty sure I didn't meet him.
But then you say, well, we got to have mass deportations. That's not going to happen because the 14th Amendment says if you're born here, you're an American and you can't kick Americans out. And then if you wanted to deport the people already here, each and every one are entitled to due process. And it would take decades to do that and gazillions of dollars. And the courts would block you at every turn. You must know all that.
Bill, I think you're wrong about the 14th Amendment, and frankly, the whole thing with anchor babies and the concept of anchor babies, I don't think you're right about that. I think
can
it's
quote
going to
it.
be
You want me to
proven that
quote
you're
you the
wrong.
amendment?
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
We have an A from the Better Business Bureau, and people like it. Now, he's saying they didn't learn. We have many, many people that will be witnesses. Again, I don't settle cases. I don't do it because that's why I don't get sued very often, because I don't settle, unlike a lot of other people. We have a situation where we will win in court, but many of the people that are witnesses did tremendously well and made a lot of money. False. Recently at the Fox debate, they said it had a D- rating from the Better Business Bureau. I said, that's not true. It had an A. They said, no, you're wrong. It has a D-. Well, I turned out to be right. Before the end of the debate, I gave them the A. We had it sent to us. And here's the A rating from the Better Business Bureau. And they refused to put it on that night. They probably said it some other time when nobody was listening. So we have an A rating, not a D- rating. At Trump University, we teach success. That's what it's all about, success. It's going to happen to you. If you're going to achieve anything, you have to take action. And action is what Trump University is all about. But action is just a small part of Trump University. Trump University is about knowledge, about a lot of different things. They said it had a D- rating from the Better Business Bureau. I said, that's not true. It had an A. They said, no, you're wrong. It has a D-. Well, I turned out to be right. Before the end of the debate, I gave them the A. We had it sent to us. And here's the A rating from the Better Business Bureau. Going to have professors and adjunct professors that are absolutely terrific people, terrific brains, successful. We are going to have the best of the best. And honestly, if you don't learn from them, if you don't learn from me, if you don't learn from the people that we're going to be putting forward, and these are all people that are hand-picked by me, that are hand-picked by me, that are hand-picked by me, then you're just not going to make it in terms of the world of success. I think the biggest step towards success is going to be sign up at Trump University. We're going to teach you about business. We're going to teach you better than the business schools are going to teach you. And I went to the best business school. We're going to teach you better. It's going to be a shorter process. It's not going to involve years and years of your life. It's going to be less expensive. And I think it's going to be a better education. They're hand-picked by me.
James Harris's job was to get people to believe they, too, could be as successful at real estate as Donald Trump. Get them to pay as much as $34,000.
We were bringing in the money.
A lot of it?
A lot of money.
Were you said you were the top guy? Were you the top guy?
I don't know if I was. I just know I'm really good at what I do.
You've said you were the top guy.
Okay, so maybe I was the top guy.
What do you know about real estate?
Real estate is a very wide, huge business.
Kept walking up and down the aisle, flashing his Rolex in our faces.
Bob Guillot was one of James Harris's students. He is part of a lawsuit trying to get back his $34,000. He says the school was a fraud, so was his teacher.
He bragged that he had dinner with Donald Trump.
Did you ever have dinner with him?
I never had dinner with him.
Bob Guia was in one of your conferences, and you said you just had dinner with Donald Trump. In one of your speaking engagements.
I don't have any recollection of that.
Remember when you said this? I'm a former licensed agent broker. At 29, I became the top 1% broker in the country. I build homes in Atlanta, Georgia, and I used to live in Beverly Hills.
Yes. If I said those things, they are true. I did live in Beverly Hills, and I.
We have no record of you ever living in Beverly Hills.
Okay, well.
We can't find your broker's license anywhere.
Okay.
And I have no idea what homes you built in Atlanta, Georgia. You build homes in Georgia?
I'm not prepared to answer those questions today.
This is part of your pitch.
No,
is any of that true?
Again, I'm not going to answer those questions because I haven't seen that.
Well, what do you know about real estate?
Again, I'm not prepared to answer those questions today. This is about Trump University.
They're hand-picked by me.
And none of Trump University's experts who taught at the seminars were picked by Donald Trump.
And we've got his videotapes, and we've got his sworn testimony, which undercuts every statement in the videotapes. He said, my hand-picked experts will teach you my personal secrets. He and the president of the university have already testified under oath. He never met the instructors. They weren't hand-picked. They weren't experts. Some of them came out of fast food.
They're hand-picked by me. I don't settle cases. I don't do it because that's why I don't get sued very often, because I don't settle, unlike a lot of other people. Once you settle, everybody sues you. I don't get sued very often because I'm not a settler.
New report from USA Today found Trump and his businesses have been involved in at least 3,500 lawsuits over 3 decades.
3,500 lawsuits. That is unprecedented for a presidential nominee. In fact, if each lawsuit involving Trump were the basis of an episode of Law and Order, they could sustain all 456 episodes of the original, all 389 episodes of Law and Order SVU, all 195 episodes of Law and Order Criminal Intent, and all 22 episodes of Law and Order LA, as well as every episode of The Practice, Ally McBeal, LA Law, Boston Legal, Night Court, The Good Wife, Matlock, Jag, Perry Mason, Judging Amy, The Guardian, The Public Defender, Owen Marshall, Counselor at Law, Harry's Law, Courthouse, Suits, Family Law, Sweet Justice, 1971's The DA, 2004's The DA, Reasonable Doubts, Damages, Shark, The Defenders, The Paper Chase, Head Cases, Judge for the Defense, and all 3 episodes of NBC's First Years, and at that point, you're still missing 1 lawsuit, but you've also basically run out of television shows about lawyers, meaning Trump's lawsuits exceed the limits of the fucking genre.
To achieve anything, you have to take action. And action is what Trump University is all about. But action is just a small part of Trump University. But when they are on the stand, they will be showing and shown through these reports.
So I was looking for courses that I could learn about the basics of business, such as branding, marketing, finance. In addition, I took some of the real estate courses. I thought maybe the real estate way would be the way for me to go also, to look at investing in real estate. And I must tell you that the courses that I took were outstanding.
I went into the Florida markets and did about 40 business deals there, real estate deals in South Carolina, and the returns on those deals were incalculable. They were just amazing. And I wouldn't have been able to do those deals without learning Donald Trump's business techniques and real estate strategies. And I learned them all from Trump University.
We made a goal to do a deal and get our money back, and within 60 days we hit our goal, bought a property at auction, resold the property, and made approximately the same money we spent on Trump University back.
The courses that I took were outstanding. They were excellent in terms of the quality of the content. In fact, I still have them on my iTunes and on my cell phone and listen to them every once in a while.
It was an amazing, amazing learning experience. For me, the teachers were very positive with me.
That's why he has to do scams like Trump University. Oh, come on, I'll teach you all the tricks. We're not going to teach him anything. Just take as much money as there. No billionaire is doing a scam university. They don't need to. They already have the money.
We begin with a bizarre twist in the race for president. Donald Trump accused of once pretending to be his own media spokesperson during a phone interview.
This is from 25 years ago, and let me play a portion of the tape for you.
What's your name again? John Miller. What is your position? Well, I'm sort of handling PR because you get so much of it.
On this tape, the person on it talks about his dating exploits, goes on about his divorce, things like that. I guess the simple question this morning, are you aware of the tape? Is it you?
No, I don't think it, I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time, and it doesn't sound like my voice at all. I have many, many people that are trying to imitate my voice, and you can imagine that. And this sounds like one of the scams, one of the many scams. Doesn't sound like me.
The Post says that you acknowledged a couple decades ago that, in fact, that was you, but it was a joke.
I don't think it was me. It doesn't sound like me. I don't know even what they're talking about. I have no idea.
The Post also says this is something you did rather routinely, that you would call reporters and plant stories and say either you were John Miller or John Barron, but in fact it was actually you on the phone. Is that something you did with any regularity?
No, and it was not me on the phone. It was not me on the phone. And it doesn't sound like me on the phone, I will tell you that, and it was not me on the phone.
Meanwhile, a penitent Donald Trump had come to the opposite conclusion. The John Miller fiasco he called a joke gone awry. A quote, "What I did became a good time at Marla's expense, and I'm very sorry." You admitted you were John Miller. You admitted it in public. But we're not done yet. He admitted it in court proceedings as well. Now, this was about John Barron. When they asked him, hey, have you ever used that name and pretended to be someone you're not? Quote, "I believe on occasion I use that name." There is no question about it.
With somebody identifying himself as John Miller, supposedly a spokesman for Donald Trump.
Somebody that knows, and I think somebody that he trusts and likes.
But the reporters soon became suspicious John Miller was actually Trump himself, bragging about his own exploits with women.
He's somebody that has a lot of options, and frankly, he gets called by everybody. He gets called by everybody in the book in terms of women.
The supposed spokesman described how Trump was living with Marla Maples, but not ready to settle down.
He didn't want to make a commitment. He really thought it was too soon. He's living with Marla, and he's got 3 other girlfriends.
He even bragged that superstars like Madonna wanted to date Trump.
Well, she called and wanted to go out with him, that I can tell you.
The Washington Post reports Trump has previously acknowledged using a fake name.
Are you aware of the tape? Is it you?
No, I don't think it, I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time, and it doesn't sound like my voice at all. I have many, many people that are trying to imitate my voice, and you can imagine that. And this sounds like one of the scams, one of the many scams.
As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton signed off on a deal allowing Russians to take an increased stake in a company called Uranium One, giving up control of about 20% of America's uranium supply to the Russians. Here's one example of Clinton corruption. As Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton signed off on a deal allowing Russians to take an increased stake in a company called Uranium One. Clinton's approval of the deal netted the owners of the uranium company millions and millions of dollars. In exchange for signing off on the deal, some of the former owners of Uranium One gave the Clinton Foundation millions and millions of dollars in donations.
Let me introduce you to the Trump Foundation. And I'm not talking about the estimated 12 pounds of foundation that Trump wears on his face. I'm talking about his charitable organisation.
So Trump's unwillingness to pay people has resulted in lawsuits and a lack of policy. Now, that might give Trump a reputation as something of a miser, but at least there's all the money he's given to charity, right? He and his campaign have bragged about that so many times.
Anyone who knows about Donald Trump and his career knows that this is a man who's given away tens of millions of dollars to charitable causes.
And then there's Trump's broad claim in an interview with the Washington Post that he has, quote, given millions of dollars away.
All right, Donald Trump's campaign has repeatedly emphasized his generosity. He's a giver.
It's a sticky little thing called a fact. Tens of millions of dollars that the Trump campaign continuously says Donald Trump has given away, without specifically providing any of the sticky little facts to back it all up.
Especially given that his spokesperson, Hope Hicks, says that he's given tens of millions of dollars, and I believe there was a claim that he made that he's given over $100 million, which is a lot of money.
Here's what I know. I know Donald Trump has donated over $100 million to charitable causes over the last number of years. $100 million.
Welcome back. You're watching CNN. I'm Brooke Baldwin. A new report is raising all kinds of questions today about exactly how charitable Donald Trump really is.
Most recently reported Trump retooled his charity to use other people's money and has not donated to it since 2008.
In 2014, it had just $1.3 million in the bank. And Donald Trump hasn't given any money to his foundation since 2008.
It is interesting that Trump really hasn't given any of his own money to this foundation since 2008.
And there's no staff, there's no paid staff. The board of directors is 4 Trumps, Donald Jr., Ivanka, Eric, and 1 Trump Foundation staff or Trump organization staffer. So it's basically just, it exists basically on paper.
Since 2008, he hasn't put anything into his charity.
Most of the family's foundation's cash doesn't come from the family, but from other donors. Is Donald just stamping his brand on other folks' money and pretending it's his?
In many cases, if not all the recent ones, he takes the money that's been donated to his foundation, puts his name on it, and gives it to other people.
Now, a new report suggests that the donations that come from Trump's personal foundation are almost entirely other people's money.
Anyone who knows about Donald Trump and his career.
Like, it's called OPM. I do that all the time in business, called other people's money. There's nothing like doing things with other people's money. OPM. Other people's money.
How does this work? I mean, how does a charity like the Trump Foundation give away other charities' monies and then take the credit?
Well, it's a really unusual situation. I talked to a lot of people who are experts on the world of nonprofits, and they say this basically never happens. Normally, if you start a foundation and put your name on it, and you're a famously wealthy person, the expectation is the money that's in the foundation was originally your money that you gave to the foundation. And that's how Trump's foundation started. But about 10 years ago, he made a change, and now he doesn't put any money into his own foundation. He takes in other donors' money, and he gives it away as the Donald Trump Foundation's money. And the expectation and the assumption among the people who get it is that this is Donald Trump's money because that's how everybody else does it. But in fact, he's sort of engineered a way to look like he's being charitable without actually spending a dollar out of his own pocket.
For 2 years, the Trump Foundation gave liberally to the Palm Beach Police Foundation. And the group holds its policeman's ball at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort every winter. But get this, Wolf, Trump's Mar-a-Lago actually charged the police foundation for using the ballroom. Not a small amount either. The foundation's tax records showed that it paid Trump more than $500,000 over the course of 2 years for 2 of the balls it held there.
But he said, you know, a number of times out on the campaign trail that he has donated millions of dollars to charity.
Trump and his staff were adamant that he has given away millions privately off the foundation's book. But even if you thought that, why wouldn't he give it through his own foundation? He set up a foundation to give to charity. Why would he do it off the books through something else? I got news for you, because he ain't doing it.
One reporter in particular, David Farenthold of the Washington Post, has been trying for months to track down Trump's charitable giving, and he's come up almost completely empty.
Between 2008 and this May, when he gave that $1 million donation to the veterans under a lot of media pressure, in that period, from 2008 to this May, I can find one gift from Donald Trump's own pocket, and that was for less than $10,000 in 2009. And earlier this year, he also released a list of what he said were his his charitable contributions over the last 10 years, or last 5 years. None of that was a donation from his own pocket. Most of it was free rounds of golf given away by his golf courses.
The Post contacted 167 charities searching for evidence of personal gifts from Trump in the period between 2008 and this May. The search turned up just one donation in the period.
So his campaign claims $100 million, but reporters can only find 10,000.
So far, I've called 326 charities that seem to be closely tied to Donald Trump, looking for evidence that they had gotten money from Trump. And between 2008 and this May, I've found just one donation out of Trump's own pocket. That was in 2009, and it was for less than $10,000.
Claimed that he gave away millions, but one for under $10,000.
So if it's not coming from the foundation, where is it coming from? Is that what's hidden in the tax returns? And could that be a sticking point to their release?
The Post explains that Trump won't release his tax returns, which would confirm such gifts, and his staff won't supply details.
As you've probably heard, Donald Trump still refuses to release his tax returns. One reason he might be doing that is so we can't actually confirm how much money he's given to charity. And
you know what? You can't allow the political pressure to fall on people and cave because that's what the people want. That's not what the American people want. Mitt Romney was weak, and that's why he released his taxes.
So what about Donald Trump? Will he release his tax returns?
Part of why people are calling for him to release his taxes is so that we do know how much he himself has given to charity. Will you or the campaign release exactly what that number is? And the reason I ask, why would you doubt it?
I doubt it because this is like badgering. In other words, I don't see it as journalism. I see it as badgering.
And I don't know what you think you're going to get by looking at Mr. Trump's tax returns. I think Mr. Romney is trying to stay relevant, and that's why if he has inside information on what's inside Mr. Trump's tax returns, maybe he's colluding with the IRS to find something that he should know about, because I don't know anything about it.
You never going to see his tax returns.
You're never going to see him.
It's just not going to happen, and I think there are millions of reasons why we're never going to see him now.
Yeah, clearly.
I think Donald Trump Jr. really said it best. If he released the tax returns, there's so much in there. That's all anybody would be talking about for the rest of the campaign.
Okay. Or, you know, look, it's not about like somehow getting the tax returns. Show us any evidence of it.
Donald Trump is facing questions tonight about his charitable foundation. The foundation spent more than $250,000 of donated money to settle lawsuits against Trump businesses.
Donald Trump spent more than $250,000 from his charitable foundation to settle lawsuits.
And in both cases, it's Trump's charity, which is mostly filled with other people's money, that actually pays off those bills, which is against the law.
Trump spent $20,000 of money earmarked for charitable purposes to buy a 6-foot-tall painting of himself. It's part of the story. The craziest part is that Trump already had another giant painting of himself.
It was the second time Trump used foundation funds for a portrait of him.
What is he doing with his face? How did that portrait cost $10,000? It looks like someone Xeroxed a black and white picture of Trump and then painted over it with condiments from Burger King. And it is not just portraits. Trump also wants to use foundation funds to buy a signed Tim Tebow helmet.
Trump used money donated for charity to buy himself a Tim Tebow signed football helmet.
A steal at $12,000.
Developing tonight, Donald Trump is pushing back against claims of corruption following new revelations about a 2013 donation to a political group that was backing Florida's Attorney General Pam Bondi, a Republican, and the fact that Bondi at the time was weighing an investigation, should she bring one, into Trump University.
Now, Attorney General Bondi has denied that her office's decision not to join the lawsuit against Trump University had anything to do with the money. And I'm sure it also had nothing to do with the fact that Trump held a fundraiser for her right after she dropped the investigation.
And you said recently, quote, when you give, they do whatever the hell you want them to do.
You better believe it. I give to many people. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them, 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me.
Quote, she's gotten caught lying so many times that it's amazing she can say with a straight face that there was nothing improper about Trump's illegal donation, end quote. Now,
Donald, you won't hear this on the media, but Donald gave, excuse me. Have you? Donald gave $20 million to the St. Jude Children's Home. $20 million. He could have used that $20 million for television ads, but he decided to give to children with cancer. So that's Donald Trump.
I'm really rich.
Bashful, he is not.
I've made billions and billions of dollars dealing with people all over the world.
Ever flashy.
Now, here's the good news. I'm very rich.
Donald Trump likes to flaunt his fortune.
I built a net worth of over $10 billion.
But that number, $10 billion, has never been fully substantiated. It's under contention how much Trump is really worth. Fortune estimates his net worth at $3.72 billion. Forbes, with their own analysis, concludes $4.5. Trump has even sued over an author's claim he's worth less than advertised.
Trump says he's worth more than $10 billion. He's not even worth close to $10 billion. But he's not worth 200. He's worth $3.7 billion based on our findings. We've been spending most of the last year. We've been giving an audit. We have 35 years. We've been tracking Trump's wealth since the Forbes 400 started. So we have years and years, decades and decades. There's no assets that are hiding that we don't know about. We've been tracking him since before anybody knew who he was. He's worth a lot less than he says. He's worth a lot less than last year. He's down $800 million, but he is a billionaire. He's worth, again, we think 3.7.
He's worth a lot more than what his critics say.
He's worth a lot more than his critics, and he's worth about a third of what he says he's worth himself. So, as always, listen, we have a rule at Forbes. It's called the Trump rule. Whatever Donald Trump tells us, we generally think he's probably worth about a third of that. We have every single asset, and if you look at we've compared his FEC documents, again, 35 years of records. We have a very good fix on every asset he has, how much debt's on each asset, what the partners are.
And I have assets, big accounting firm, one of the most highly respected, $9,240 million. And I have liabilities of about 500. That's long-term debt, very low interest rates. In fact, one of the big banks came to me and said, Donald, you don't have enough borrowings. Could we loan you $4 billion? I said, I don't need it. I don't want it. And I've been there. I don't want it. But in 2 seconds, they give me whatever I wanted. So I have a total net worth, and now with the increase, it'll be well over $10 billion. But here, a total net worth of $8 billion. Net worth, not assets, not liability, a net worth after all debt.
It's called the Trump rule. Whatever Donald Trump tells us, we generally think he's probably worth about a third of that.
But you will learn more about Donald Trump by going down to the federal elections, where I filed a 104-page, essentially financial statement of sorts, the forms that they have. It shows income. In fact, the income, I just looked today, the income is filed at $694 million for this past year. $694 million. If you would have told me I was going to make that 15 or 20 years ago, I would have been very surprised.
Crunching the numbers on Donald Trump, Forbes magazine reporting the net worth of the Republican nominee fell by about $800 million in the last year. That's largely because of declines in New York real estate, knocking close to $1 billion off the businessman's fortune. Out of Trump's 28 assets, Forbes found that 18 properties declined in value, most notably his trademark Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan.
This guy's a pathological liar.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is...
That's almost a clinical...
well, it is.
Yeah.
It's no surprise, really. Before the debate, Politico analyzed a week's worth of Trump's speeches and found that Trump averaged about one falsehood every 3 minutes and 15 seconds, which is damning. Man. Though, on the plus side, you can use Trump's lies to tell if your microwave popcorn is done.
Because I'll do a full disclosure of finances.
Including
and I
your
will
tax
tell you,
returns?
We'll look at that. Maybe I'm going to do the tax returns when Obama does his birth certificate.
Not doing a good job.
You questioned his citizenship during his campaign, and you said afterwards, if you produce that long form birth cert, you produce your tax returns, but you didn't do it, did you?
Well, I don't know. Did he do it? And I will be, if I decide to run for office, I'll produce my tax returns, absolutely. And I would.
That I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
I get audited before the election, though.
I hope so. I'd like to. I have no problem
Do you
with
pledge to do it
tax
before the
returns.
election?
Excuse me. Sure. If the audit is finished, I'll do it as fast as the audit is finished. Remember this. I've already given my financials, and my financials show I'm worth more than $10 billion by any stretch of the imagination.
Gotcha.
Has tremendous cash flow. You don't learn much from tax returns, but I would love to give the tax returns, but I can't do it until I'm finished with the audit. But the one problem I have is that I'm always audited by the IRS, which I think is very unfair. I don't know, maybe because of religion, maybe because of something else, maybe because I'm doing this, although this is just recently.
What do you mean religion?
Well, maybe because of the fact that I'm a strong Christian and I feel strongly about it, and maybe there's a bias.
You think maybe you get audited for being a strong Christian?
You see what's happened. I mean,
Trump says he gets audited every year, perhaps because he is such a strong Christian. Do you believe the same is true of you, Cuban?
No, you know what? I get audited every year because I have a lot of money, and presumably so does he.
Donald Trump still won't reveal how much money he makes or how much he pays in taxes. The presumptive nominee told the Associated Press Tuesday that despite the pressure to release his tax returns, he likely won't be releasing them before November due to an audit of his returns since 2009. Trump said he will release them after the audit is complete. There's nothing to learn from them, Trump said in an interview published on Wednesday, adding that he didn't think they would interest voters.
you don't learn much from tax returns, but
The big headline in the New York Times this morning, the paper has obtained what it says is Donald Trump's state tax return from 1995. It shows a loss of $916 million. That is large enough, the paper says, that Trump may not have had to pay federal income taxes for nearly 2 decades.
The deduction so large it could have allowed Trump to legally avoid paying federal income taxes for up to 18 years.
Well, there are two issues here to separate. And one of them is because he is the owner of a lot of real estate that he manages, he may well pay no income taxes. We know for a fact that he didn't pay income taxes in 1978, 1979, 1984, 1992, and 1994. We know because of the reports of the New Jersey Casino Control Commission. We don't know about any year after that.
But that's because he is depreciating the properties, right? While in fact they're increasing in value. But I depreciate the home office in my house. I work there. I don't have another office. It's just not much of a benefit for me, obviously.
Most Americans cannot save more than $6,000 a year from depreciating real estate. That's all they can write off against their salary or business profits.
Well, I don't come close to 6,000.
But people like Trump can take all of the money that's made from a TV show, from selling neckties made in China, running golf courses, and wipe out that income for tax purposes with depreciation. Only a narrow little segment of people qualify for this.
you don't learn much from tax returns, but
As a line of clothing. Now, where were these made?
These were made, I don't know where they were made, but they were made someplace. But they're great. It's ties, shirts, cufflinks, everything sold at Macy's, and they're doing great. #1 selling tie anywhere in the world.
#1 selling tie anywhere in the world. You wouldn't wear that shirt?
We also have them in white and beautiful white.
Where are the shirts made? Bangladesh.
Well, it's good.
Okay.
We employ people in Bangladesh.
Ties? Where are the ties
they
made?
Have to work
These are
too.
beautiful ties.
They are great ties.
The ties are made in where? China? Ties are made in China.
They said, oh, this is so bad. Can we sever ties? I said, I don't care, sever ties. I don't wear ties so much anymore, you know. I didn't like the ties that much anyway. You know why? Because they were made in China.
Will you promise that you will, and how soon will you move your clothing collection to clothes that are made in China and Mexico?
Not going to do it. And you know why? Because there are plenty of clothing makers in America. If you go on my website, marcorubio.com, everything we have on there is made in America. The reason why he makes it in China or in Mexico is because he can make more money on it.
I spoke to Jack Mitnick about the 1995 tax returns that showed Trump declared a loss of over $915 million, meaning Trump could have legally avoided paying federal taxes for 18 years. How involved was Donald Trump in preparing his taxes, or did he just hand everything over to you?
No, I did all the tax preparation. He never saw the product until it was presented to him for signature.
So I had to ask the accountant for his reaction to Trump saying this Monday night.
I have legally used the tax laws to my benefit. I have brilliantly used those laws.
Donald Trump is calling himself brilliant, saying he had a brilliant idea, but really this was your idea.
Right, I'm the one who did all the work.
Only the little people pay taxes, right?
Now, there are some speaking out on the other side, some even holding a press conference in New York this morning to voice their concerns. Season 1 runner-up Kwame Jackson was among them, and he joins me now. I told you before, I loved your season, by the way.
Thanks for watching.
Why are you guys coming out and doing this?
Yeah, so for us, this is a collective voice. Individually, I've been speaking out against Mr. Trump for about 9 months in terms of why I think he's not fit to be president.
Why do you think he's not fit?
For a couple reasons. One, I don't think he knows the issues. 2, I don't think he has the temperament to be president. I think that, petulance does not equal presidential behavior. 3, I think that he doesn't see a vision for kind of a more diverse and inclusive America.
He put so many good contractors out of business.
I don't care if he's Donald Trump or Donald Duck. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and I have to stand up for myself.
Donald Trump had basically decided what subcontractors would work in Atlantic City and which ones would not.
They are the voices skeptical of Donald Trump and his promises of prosperity.
He wrote a lovely letter of recommendation at my request, highlighting the fine points of the design and my own personal talents as an architect.
And how much money did you end up losing?
I was shortchanged well over $100,000. We were paid at the end a small sum, roughly 15 cents on the dollar relative to what we had rightfully billed in accordance with multiple agreements.
An investigation by USA Today finding hundreds in business who accused Trump of not paying everything they were owed, sometimes tying them up in the courts for years.
Philadelphia cabinet makers who won a contract for the construction in the 80s but lost more than $80,000 in the process. Paul Friel says they just never got paid in full.
It absolutely was the beginning of the end.
5 years after finishing the work, the family business out of business.
It hurt right up until the end when my father died 9 years ago. He talked about it a lot. He was not proud to have been involved with Donald Trump.
Somebody running a small business, okay, as an independent business person, that's a lot of money. It hurt. It was hard to get over.
Now, I have a great history of paying my bills on time. But you're right. If somebody does a poor job, I'm not the quickest pay. But if they do a good job, I pay them quickly.
If my father's work was really inferior, then why would the Trump Organization want him to work for the Trump Organization in the future?
The USA Today Network's special report discovering at least 60 lawsuits, plus hundreds of other liens and judgments over the last 3 decades from people who say Trump and his businesses stiffed them. Not just some of Trump's own lawyers, but a dishwasher, a plumber, waiters and bartenders. Lots of who you might call little guys.
Only the little people pay taxes, right?
The big lie of this campaign is that Trump cares about the people who are going to vote for him. He doesn't care about those people. He doesn't care about anyone. You know him personally. You spend a lot of time. I spent 18 months following this man around when I was a young man. People say there's a different Trump. It seems to me like he's the same useless jackass off camera. But is there this other Trump? There is no other Trump. There is no other Trump. If you Google the word sociopath, you'll get the first list will be the 10 key qualities of a sociopath. That is a perfect description of Donald Trump. So I am here because Donald Trump has successfully muzzled now for 20, 25 years all of those people who know who he actually is. I started this book before he started building these incredible confidentiality agreements that did effectively muzzle people.
Recently, you've spent a lot of time talking about President Obama's birth certificate, or lack thereof. You don't seem convinced that he has one.
No, I'm not convinced that he has one. I've had very smart people say, Donald, stay on the China issue, stay on the Saudi Arabia issue, stay on the India taking our jobs, and the Mexico, which is NAFTA, which cleaned out New England. Get off the birth certificate issue.
Why don't you?
Because you know what? 3 weeks ago when I started, I thought he was probably born in this country, and now I really have a much bigger doubt than I did before.
But based on what?
And you know what? His grandmother in Kenya said he was born in Kenya, and she was there and witnessed the birth, okay? He doesn't have a birth certificate, or he hasn't shown it. He has what's called a certificate of live birth. That is something that's easy to get. When you want a birth certificate, it's very hard to get.
But it's considered the equivalent. And in the
it's not the equivalent.
In the state of Hawaii, they said they have seen this document. It is evidence that he was born in the United States. That's good enough for them. Scholars have looked at it.
A birth certificate is not even close. A certificate of live birth is not even signed by anybody. I saw his. I read it very carefully. Doesn't have a serial number, doesn't have a signature. There's not even a signature.
Do you believe he's lying?
I'm starting to think that he was not born here.
Do you believe he's lying, Donald? Come on, just answer.
He spent $2 million in legal fees trying to get away from this issue. And if he weren't lying, why wouldn't he just solve it? And I wish he would, because if he doesn't, it's one of the greatest scams in the history of politics and in the history, period. You are not allowed to be a president if you're not born in this country. He may not have been born in this country. And I'll tell you what, 3 weeks ago, I thought he was born in this country. Right now, I have some real doubts. I have people that actually have been studying it, and they cannot believe what they're finding.
You have people now down there searching, I mean, in Hawaii?
Absolutely. And they cannot believe what they're finding.
It is wonderful to be here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. What a week. As some of you heard, the state of Hawaii released my official long-form birth certificate. Hopefully, this puts all doubts to rest. No one is happier, no one is prouder to put this birth certificate matter to rest than the Donald. And that's because he can finally get back to focusing on the issues that matter. Like, did we fake the moon landing?
Donald Trump, by contrast, he clung to the birther lie for years. He still isn't apologetic about it. Do you understand why so many people, including African Americans, are upset with him over this issue?
Well, listen, I made my position on it really clear a long time ago, and Donald's now made his position on it clear.
which is that after the president presented his birth certificate, Donald has said, you know, he was born in the United States, and that's the end of the issue. After the president presented his birth certificate, Donald has said, you know, he was born in the United States, and that's the end of the issue.
Welcome back to Hannity. We continue with Donald Trump. I did not want to bring this up because every person that interviews you goes right for the birth certificate issue. By the way, you did win. I did. And released it. They finally, whatever it was, they released. You know, some people don't know what it was they released, and I'm not sure what he released. But
There's one line called place of birth. I'd like to see what he said.
a lot of people want me to talk about place of birth. You saw this audience. Probably the biggest hand I got was when I mentioned place of birth.
Many people did not think it was authentic. His mother was not in the hospital. There were many other things that came out.
Okay, I thought the birth issue was established. You were satisfied?
I wasn't satisfied. I never said I was satisfied. I never told you that I was satisfied. I want to see, excuse me, who's satisfied?
You don't still question he was born in the United States, do you? I have no idea. Even at this point? Well, I don't know. Was it a birth certificate? You tell me. You know, some people say that was not his birth certificate. I'm saying I don't know. Nobody knows. And you don't know either, Jonathan. You're a smart guy. You don't know either.
Going back a few years, do you regret questioning President Obama's citizenship? Why or why not?
Not even a little bit.
I don't regret. Why would I regret?
But he is a citizen. He produced that on form birth.
Well, a lot of people don't agree with you, and a lot of people feel it wasn't a proper certificate. You, almost single-handedly, were out there questioning President Obama's background. You said, how can you not show a birth certificate?
But Trump comes along and said, birth certificate. He gave a birth certificate. Whether or not that was a real certificate, because a lot of people question it, I certainly question it.
Okay,
I don't know why. Well, I don't know. According to you, it's not true. I don't know.
He released a birth certificate.
You know, if you believe that, that's not. I really don't know. I mean, I don't know why he wouldn't release his records. His birth certificate about Obama. His mother was a U.S. citizen born in Kansas. Was he an African citizen? Who knows? Who knows? Who cares right now?
Do you think your birther position has hurt you among African Americans?
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even talk about it anymore. But I don't know. I guess with maybe some. I don't know why. I really don't know. But I don't think very few people. You're the first one that's brought that up in a while.
36 more times he tweeted birther conspiracy nonsense, such as, quote, an extremely credible source has called my office and told me that Barack Obama's birth certificate is a fraud. And how amazing, the state health director who verified copies of Obama's birth certificate died in plane crash today, all others lived, seeming to imply the president had the man killed.
Good evening. Today, Donald Trump publicly acknowledged what most Americans have accepted as the truth for years, that President Barack Obama was born in the United States. Trump was an outspoken voice of the so-called birther movement, which challenged Obama's legitimacy as president. Today, without apology, Mr. Trump admitted the president is a natural-born American, and in the same breath managed to wrongly accuse Hillary Clinton of first launching the discredited movement.
Donald Trump today finally submitting to the truth.
President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
A 7-second statement after 28 minutes of buildup, trying to reverse a position Trump's held for 5 years, championing a conspiracy theory.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate?
I'm starting to wonder myself whether or not he was born in this country.
So I have people that actually have been studying it and they cannot believe what they find.
He gave a birth certificate. Whether or not that was a real certificate, because a lot of people question it, I certainly question it.
The Daily Beast reports here, Donald Trump has not only spread dangerous misinformation about the links between vaccines and autism, but he's also given money to the anti-vaxxer cause. His monetary support for the conspiracy theory came in the form of a $10,000 check to an anti-vaccine charity run by former Playboy model and television host Jenny McCarthy.
And we've had so many instances, people that worked for me just the other day, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, the child, a beautiful child, went to have the vaccine and came back and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic.
And I've known cases. I knew a case, a 2-year-old child went for the vaccination, the child was fine. A month later, the parent was up in arms, didn't know what was going on because the baby had just lost it.
Right. And you know that most physicians disagree with that in the studies.
They do.
And the studies have said that there is no link. It used to be thought that it was the mercury in those vaccinations, which they have not had for years, and yet we're at the highest number in recent time of autism. So maybe it's environmental.
Well, it's also very controversial to even say, but I couldn't care less. I mean, I've seen people where they have a perfectly healthy child, and they go for the vaccinations, and a month later, the child is no longer healthy.
I'm not a believer in global warming. I'm not a believer in man-made global warming. It could be warming, and it's going to start to cool at some point. And, you know, in the 1920s, people talked about global cooling. I don't know if you know that or not. They thought the Earth was cooling. Now it's global warming. And actually, we've had times where the weather wasn't working out, so they changed it to extreme weather, and they have all different names, you know, so that it fits the bill. But the problem we have, if you look at, you know, our energy costs and all of the things that we're doing to solve a problem that I don't think in any major fashion exists. I mean, Obama thinks it's the #1 problem of the world today, and I think it's very low on the list. So I am not a believer, and I will, unless somebody can prove something to me, I believe there's weather, I believe there's change, and I believe it goes up, and it goes down, and it goes up again, and it changes depending on years and centuries.
My hair look okay? Got a little spray. Give me a little spray. You know, you're not allowed to use hairspray anymore because it affects the ozone. You know that, right? In the old days, you put the hairspray on, it was good. Today, you put the hairspray on, it's good for 12 minutes, right? But, you know, they say that you can't. I said, wait a minute. So if I take hairspray, and if I spray it in my apartment, which is all sealed, and you're telling me that affects the ozone layer? Yes. I say, no way, folks, no way.
You know, his father was with Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald being, you know, shot. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. What is this, right prior to his being shot? And nobody even brings it up. I mean, they don't even talk about that. That was reported, and nobody talks about it. But I think it's horrible. I think it's absolutely horrible that a man can go and do that, what he's saying there.
Right. There was a picture out there that reportedly shows Rafael Cruz standing with Lee Harvey Oswald.
I mean, what was he doing with Lee Harvey Oswald shortly before the death, before the shooting? It's horrible.
His father. I don't know his father. I met him once. I think he's a lovely guy. I think he's a lovely guy. All I did is point out the fact that on the cover of the National Enquirer, there was a picture of him and crazy Lee Harvey Oswald having breakfast. Now, Ted never denied that it was his father. Instead, he said, Donald Trump, I had nothing to do with it. This was a magazine that, frankly, in many respects, should be very respected.
But let me ask you, this story, this that we see in the National Enquirer, this kind of rumor mongering, should this kind of thing just be off limits? Do you condemn this story?
I don't care. I mean, really, I don't care. The National Enquirer did a story. It was their story. It wasn't my story. It was about Ted Cruz. I have no idea whether it was right or not. They actually have a very good record of being right.
I've always said, why didn't the National Enquirer get the Pulitzer Prize for Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy.
So Talking Points memo reports here. In a totally unexpected development, we learned that back in the early 90s, Donald Trump pressured his then-girlfriend, future wife, and future ex-wife to pose nude in Playboy. Trump even negotiated a mega payday for the nude photo shoot. In the end, Marla Maples refused.
First of all, it's rigged. And I'm afraid the election's going to be rigged, I have to be honest. Because I think my side was rigged. If I didn't win by massive landslides, I mean, think of what we won in New York and Indiana, California, 78%. That's with other people in the race. But think of it. I hear more and more
that the election on November 8th
And I'm telling you, November 8th, we better be careful because that election is going to be rigged. And I hope the Republicans are watching closely or it's going to be taken away from us.
All right, Mr. Trump, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate
Thank you.
it.
And I've been seeing it, and I've been hearing it a lot. But the whole thing with voter ID, identification, I think is really, I mean, people are going to walk in, they're going to vote 10 times maybe. Who knows? They're going to vote 10 times. So I am very concerned, and I hope the Republicans are going to be very watchful.
Yeah, they got to be vigilant.
I hope the authorities are going to be very watchful.
Okay.
Because I want to tell you, I believe it's going to be just like Bernie Sanders. I said it was rigged. Well, it's rigged here too. Believe me. Believe me.
Donald Trump has been talking a lot about rigged polls and the idea of a rigged election come November. We came to Greenville, North Carolina, where he's campaigning here today, to ask his supporters if they're worried about a rigged election and what they'll be watching for at the polls.
Big cities where Democrats have the power base, that's where you got to look for it. I mean, North Carolina, maybe a couple of cities, but you go somewhere like Chicago, New York, yeah, I'd be worried about it.
Oh, yes, sir. I am definitely worried about rigging at the polls because you have to stop and look who controls the media. The liberals control, the globalists control the media.
Trump supporters are far less likely than Clinton backers to think their vote will be counted accurately in the election. And Trump has gone a step further, asking his supporters to actively monitor the polls for suspected voter fraud.
Watch and study and make sure other people don't come in and vote 5 times.
Trump, he's asking supporters to watch the polls and watch out for...
Oh, yeah.
So are you going to be doing that?
Best I can. You need to watch the polls, see who comes in, who goes out.
What would make you think, come November 9th, this election is rigged? Would it be a Trump loss?
No.
Or is there something specific that you...
No, there would have to be data. You'd have to have, poll watchers or whatever.
Fortunately, we have data, and it tells us that voter fraud at the polls is really, really rare. A 2014 study at Loyola University found only 31 credible cases of voter fraud out of 1 billion ballots cast, which begs the question, why are voters so worried about it?
The only way we can lose, in my opinion, I really mean this, Pennsylvania, is if cheating goes on.
You've got to get every one of your friends. You've got to get every one of your family. You've got to get everybody to go out and watch and go out and vote. And when I say watch, you know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. I think you got to go out and you got to watch.
You've got to go out and you've got to get your friends and you've got to get everybody you know. And you got to watch your polling booths because I hear too many stories about Pennsylvania, certain areas. I hear too many bad stories, and we can't lose an election because of you know what I'm talking about. So go and vote and then go check out areas because a lot of bad things happen, and we don't want to lose for that reason.
And for us to...
Big statement, fellas.
I mean, to do that...
I'm sure you're not going to write it. To me, that's a message.
That's huge.
They're letting people pour into the country so they can go and vote.
Who lied about $6 million in charitable donations to veteran groups from his telethon, who lied about donating his profits from The Apprentice, about charitable donations from The Celebrity Apprentice, from Trump the Game, and to St. Jude Cancer Center, who lied about plans to debate Bernie Sanders for charity, who lied about why he would not release his taxes because he was being audited, and then proved himself a liar by saying he would release his taxes if Secretary Clinton released emails, who lied about how much money his father gave him helping him to get out of college, who lied about sending his private jet to ferry stranded U.S. servicemen, who lied about talking to the Attorney General of Florida, who declined to investigate Trump University after she had been given a campaign donation, who lied about his business in Russia, who lied about meeting Russian President Putin, who lied about offering child care to his employees when it was child care for his hotel guests, who lied about some people wanting a moment of silence for the murder of 5 Dallas policemen, who lied about seeing thousands of Muslims in New Jersey celebrating 9/11, who lied about 9/11 hijackers sending their wives and girlfriends home to Saudi Arabia, who lied about thousands of Syrian refugee terrorists being secretly admitted to this country, who lied about the Chicago police urging him to cancel a rally, who lied about the Chicago police saying they could solve crime there with tough police tactics, who lied about how there was no drought in California, how he never said Japan should have nuclear weapons, how he opposed the ouster of Egyptian President Mubarak, how the unemployment rate is 42%. Who lied about ISIS making millions a week in selling Libyan oil, who lied about dozens of secret terrorist cases in this country, who lied that a protester who tried to rush onto a stage had ties to ISIS, who lied last week about refugees entering this country carrying cell phones with ISIS flags on them and phone plans prepaid by ISIS. Can you hear me now?
This guy is a pathological liar.
He said some really nice things. He called me a genius. He said Trump's a genius.
Now, Putin called me a genius, by the way. He said Donald Trump is a genius, and he's the absolute leader over there. You know, Vladimir Putin said Donald Trump is a genius. He's going to do very well. That's a real genius. So I said, but we had a thing recently, you saw, where Putin said these great things about Donald Trump. Did you see that? He said Trump is a genius. Trump is the best leader. Trump is amazing. Okay, he said nice thing.
He said Trump is a genius, okay?
We won't get along with many of these countries. But Putin said Trump is a genius. Trump is this. He said Trump's a genius. And I like him because he called me a genius. He said Trump is the new real leader. Trump should be the leader. He's a total genius.
You didn't say you could get along very well with Vladimir Putin. You did at one point say that Russia should take care of us.
Called me a genius. I like him so far, I have to tell you.
Putin comes out. He said Donald Trump is brilliant. He's doing an amazing job, and he's leading the pack. Okay, that's nice. Putin said Donald Trump is a genius.
Called me a genius, actually. That was very nice.
Putin said nice things about me. I don't know Putin, but he said nice things about me. He said Trump is a genius, and Trump is going to win, and Trump is leading the party.
He called me a genius. He said Donald Trump is a genius, and he's going to be the leader of the party.
I moved on her, actually. You know, she was down in Palm Beach. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and her. She was married.
That's huge news, Sarah.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look.
Jeez, your girl's hot as shit. In the purple.
Whoa!
Yes!
Whoa!
Yes, the Donald has scored!
Whoa!
Oh, my man! Wait, you gotta look at me when you get out of your legs.
Set this up.
That is very.
Will you give me the thumbs
Look
up?
at you. You are a.
You gotta put the thumbs up. You gotta get the thumbs up.
Can't be too happy. Else off first? Yeah, let me.
It's very fun.
You gotta give the thumbs up.
All right, you and I will walk down.
Oh my God.
Maybe it's a different one.
Better not be the publicist. No, it's her.
Yeah, that's her, with the gold. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case they start kissing her. Grab him by the pussy. Do anything.
Let's start with not praising Vladimir Putin as a great leader. Donald Trump and Mike Pence have said he's a great leader. And Donald Trump has...
Putin's been a very strong leader for Russia.
Vladimir Putin has been a stronger leader in his country than Barack Obama has been in this country.
Donald Trump, on the other hand, didn't know that Russia had invaded the Crimea.
Oh, that's nonsense.
He's not going to go into Ukraine. All right, you can mark it down, you can put it down, you can take it anywhere you want.
He's already there, isn't he?
Donald Trump has said it. Deportation force. They want to go house to house, school to school, business to business, and kick out 16 million people. And I cannot believe...
You're going to have a deportation force.
Donald Trump and I would never support legislation that punished women.
Should the woman be punished for having an abortion? There has to be some form of punishment.
More nations should get nuclear weapons.
Don't put
try to
words into
defend
my
that.
mouth. Well, he never said that.
Wouldn't you rather, in a certain sense, have Japan have nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
About some of those comments he made about South Korea and Japan arming with nuclear weapons and a flip-flop he did on that particular issue.
They said, I want Japan to nuke. I want Japan to get nuclear weapons. Give me a break.
North Korea has nukes. Japan has a problem with that. I mean, they have a big problem with it. Maybe they would, in fact, be better off if they defend themselves from North Korea. Maybe we would be better off, including with nukes. Yes, including with nukes.
So clearly a bit of a flip-flop on that issue. And just a little bit more on that. Back in April in Racine, Wisconsin, I attended a Trump event there as well, where Trump once again basically said the same thing about South Korea and Japan as well in terms of, you know, having arms. So Trump is really going to have to do some explaining on that particular issue. Clinton expected to hit him hard on that issue as well.
Just time for a quick recap of the week, and we begin with nuclear weapons, the most terrifying thing you can stockpile right after baby dolls. There were plenty of issues regarding nuclear weapons to talk about, especially the fact that just 2 days before they gathered, America's potential next president mentioned that he would be perfectly comfortable with other countries becoming nuclear powers, including Japan and South Korea.
At some point, we have to say, you know what? We're better off if Japan protects itself against this maniac in North Korea. We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep. He says that with the confidence of a man who could easily find Saudi Arabia on the map if he was given 3 tries and the map only included countries ending with Arabia. And that's not all, because this week, Trump also refused to rule out using nuclear weapons in Europe for reasons including, and I quote, Europe is a big place. And it's a big place is not a good excuse for using nuclear weapons. It's barely a good excuse for peeing in the ocean. It was clearly extremely important that the president try and reassure the rest of the planet by providing some context for Trump's remarks.
The person who made the statements doesn't know much about foreign policy or nuclear policy or the Korean Peninsula or the world generally.
Yep. President Obama is basically implying there that you could fill a book with the things Donald Trump doesn't know, that book being the encyclopedia.
I don't want to talk about nuclear weapons. Presidents don't talk about use of nuclear weapons.
The question was asked. We're talking about NATO, which, by the way, I say is obsolete.
But you got hooked into something you shouldn't have talked about.
I think, well, someday, maybe.
Maybe?
Of course. If somebody
where would we drop a nuclear weapon in the Middle East?
Let me explain. Somebody hits us with a nuke.
ISIS.
You wouldn't fight back with a nuke?
No, to drop a nuclear weapon to a community of people
but you can't say. First of all, you don't want to say take everything off the table.
No, just
you're
nuclear.
a bad negotiator if you do that.
Just nuclear.
Look, nuclear should be off the table. But would there be a time when it could be used? Possibly.
Okay, the trouble is when you said that, the whole world heard. David Cameron in Britain heard it. The Japanese, where we bombed them in 45, heard it. They're hearing a guy running for president of the United States talking of maybe using nuclear weapons. Nobody wants to hear that about an American president.
Why are we making them? Why do we make them? We have
because of the old mutual assured destruction which Reagan hated
Just
and tried to get rid of.
I was against Iraq. I'd be the last one to use the nuclear weapons.
So can you take it off the table
now? That's sort of like the end of the ballgame.
Can you tell the Middle East we're not using the nuclear weapon on anybody?
I would never say that. I would never any of my cards off the table.
How about Europe? We won't use it in Europe.
I'm not going to take it off the table.
You might use it in Europe?
No, I don't think so. But I'm not
just say it. I'll never use a nuclear weapon in Europe.
I am not taking cards off the table.
I'll be very careful here. Several months ago, a foreign policy expert on the international level went to advise Donald Trump, and 3 times he asked about the use of nuclear weapons. 3 times he asked, at one point, if we have them, why can't we use them? That's one of the reasons why he just doesn't have foreign policy experts around.
Trump asked 3 times.
3 times in an hour briefing, why can't we use nuclear weapons? With that.
Be careful, America, and be careful, Republican leaders.
So General Hayden...
Your party is blowing up.
Last time, folks. We're going to win. We're going to keep winning. We're going to win at military. We're going to win at trade. We're going to win at everything we do. We're going to win, win, win. You people, you're going to be sick and tired of winning.
Now I'm going to make our country rich again.
And we're going to start winning again. We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with health care and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet. We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
You can't win the state of California. I think we can. I think we can win the state of California.
My question to you is, tell me why, and I've asked you before, you think you are more electable than every other Republican in this primary. Tell me how that's so. What states do you bring into play that they don't?
I think I have a really good chance of winning New York. If we win New York, the whole ball game is over because nobody ever even anticipates winning New York.